Welcome back to another episode of Motivate with Coach Camp. Of course, I am your host, Coach Camp, and I am down here in these fantastic, fabulous studios of SRP with Mr. Derek Michaud. So, you guys are always following along. You always make great comments. You're interacting with my guest. I know you guys really get a lot out of each person that comes in here, and I know that you guys are going to absolutely love this mini series I've put together. So as you know, we are now into November, and in November we have Veterans Day. Well, I like to think of it as an entire month. So I want to celebrate the veterans every time we come around to November. I celebrate them all year long, but I want to highlight some folks. And so last November, if you guys will remember, I had two that's easy for you to say, not for me, World War II veterans, Mr. Olin Pickens, KT Robbins, and I had Miss Diane Height, which is the founder of Forever Young Veterans on the show. Fantastic guest, amazing stories. So coming into 2024, I wanted to highlight another demographic of veterans. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to go to a meeting they have for the Forever Young Veterans nonprofit organization. And there I was able to meet three amazing individuals. They all served in Vietnam. And I felt like this is a great opportunity. So we are going to highlight some of our veterans that went off and fought in Vietnam. And I cannot think of a more star-studded individual to bring to you on our first episode here in November. I know you guys are going to be blown away. I know you are. So this gentleman that I have brought in today is Mr. James Williams. He was the rank of Chief Warrant Officer 3. He was in the Army, spent several years there, then transitioned from that into a civilian role, still working for the military for very many years. His story is going to be phenomenal. I do know this much about him. After being there, he was deployed three times. I don't know the details. I didn't want to know the details because I want to be amazed, just like you guys are, as we said here in this studio. So at this time, please welcome with me, Mr. James Williams. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing fine, sir. Thank you.
Yes, thanks for coming down to the studio. What do you think about all this?
It is my pleasure, sir, to be here, and I hope that I can leave some that'll help someone on the way out.
Yes, sir. Well, I'll tell you what, you've already done so much for our country, and the fact that I know that you are still engaged and not just sharing your story, but helping other veterans along, I can assure you, your message today is going to be felt by, I'm going to put it into the millions at some point. That's where we're going to hit. So I very much thank you for coming down here. So as we get started, one of the things I always like to do with my guests is I want my audience members to know where that person came from. So if you don't mind, share a little bit about where you were born, where you grew up, family members, stuff like that.
I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, Shelby County, raised around the Brunswick area, Ellendale in Tennessee. I went to Mount Pisgah High School. After graduation, I went off to college at Tuskegee, and then I joined the military in 1960.
How old were you?
I was 18 years old.
18. Did you have any brothers or sisters?
I had one sister at the time, and we was very close, but unable to find work in Memphis after college, I decided to go in the military.
Is your sister older or younger?
She's 1 year younger than I. She passed in 2005.
Sorry to hear that. So when you're deciding to go in the military, what's she saying to you? Y'all were close. She's like,
well, the whole family was totally against me joining the military. I was the first one in family to join the military.
That was one of my questions. Did you have a history of this?
No, I was the first.
You were the very first one.
Right.
So where did that come from?
To me, it was after being in ROTC in college for a year, that was to me was the way I should go. So after basic at Fort Hood and AIT at Fort Gordon and then jump school at Camel, they was looking for volunteers for special forces. So
okay, and you said you were 18.
Right.
And what year was that again?
That was in 1961.
1961. Okay, so special forces, you've never thought about the military prior to this, and you know, you went off to college, got you a little bit of, schooling behind you. And then it's like, you know what? Jobs are kind of hard. Go serve my country. No family history of that, by the way. I had a lot of family history, but my immediate mom, dad, and them, I just will, full disclosure, when I mentioned to them, I signed up for the Air Force, they were kind of like, what? So I get it. I get that part of it.
Right.
Were you scared?
Not really scared. I saw it as an opportunity to better myself in the military. And I was desired to join the Marines, but they was closed. So the only thing was open was the Army.
They were closed?
Yeah, they was closed for lunch.
Okay. I'm like, the Marines shut down? They got 200 years of history. It's you caught them on an off day.
Yep, they was closed for lunch.
So that is fascinating too. All right, James, I didn't know any of this stuff, but it was blowing me away. It's fun. So what is the moment then? Because obviously you walked over on a lunch hour. So what's that click moment?
I went in and the recruiter asked me a few questions. Can you read? Can you type? Mm-hmm. So I said, sure. So the next day he said, come back tomorrow. We are seeking you past the physical. Mm. So I went back the next day, and 6 o'clock in the morning, they took me to a place where they did all the physical and checking you out. And at 3 o'clock, they had us all in a large room in the auditorium, and that the colonel came out on stage, had us all stand, raise our right hand, and you've been sworn into the Army.
And so did you know you were going in the Army at the time?
No, I did not.
That is so funny.
I had no idea.
That is so funny.
And then they told me that you had ROTC, so we giving you the package for the other soldiers to go to Fort Hood for basic.
Wow.
So that was my introduction to the Army.
Okay, so all right, well that is definitely different. And so it's like, all right, so I'm in the Marines. Nope, you're in the Army. So there you go. You're going to Fort Benning. So what did you do in high school in that? Did you play sports?
I played basketball. I ran track. That was most of the things I did in high school.
So were you pretty adventurous as a kid?
Yeah, I was always active.
Did you getting into trouble?
Yeah, I stayed in trouble at home.
Me too. I understand.
My father stayed on me a lot. I grew up in the church. So
you had a good foundation.
Yeah, right.
Good, solid morals, I'm sure.
Right.
Just a knucklehead like a lot of us young people, myself included,
yeah.
completely. And so then you have this idea that you want to go into the military. Did you immediately decide you wanted to go Special Forces?
No, I didn't I didn't decide that until they was looking for people to join. Mm. And see, in the military, when I went in, you was only making about $65 a month.
It's not going to pay many bills.
So if you got a family, which I had a wife and daughter at the time, and I said, well, $55 extra for jumping out of plane, so that's why I decided to go airborne. And then they say if you go in Special Forces, it was a 2-year training. And what really enticed me to go is they told us that they don't have any blacks in the Special Forces at this time.
So you saw yourself as being a pioneer as well. Exactly. That's awesome.
Right. So
yeah.
And it was 50 of us signed up to join. So after 2-year training, 10 of us survived.
Wow.
So I was one of the 10. So that's how I got in Special Forces.
Incredible. So going into the military, you thought you're going to Marines, you end up in the Army. You get there and they're like, hey, if you jump out of an airplane, we'll give you a little more money. You're like, you know what? I got a kid at the house. It's not a bad idea. I'll jump out of an airplane. Yeah. And then it's like, we could also really challenge you by putting you into the Special Forces. And you're like, I like the challenge. And so you went in 1961 and Vietnam. So I did I already knew a lot of the history, but I did a little bit more research. So the research shows that 1954 was kind of when the conflict started over in that region. It wasn't necessarily declared war. It wasn't until 1964 that we really started deploying a lot of troops. And so in 1961, when you went in, and then you get the 2 years of training, you're coming out as a Special Forces member at the exact time the war is really ramping up.
Right.
Is that going through your mind?
Well, not really. Like I said, when you're in your 20s and you have no fear and they're going to train you so well, you want to go put this training to use. Mm. So that was my outlook on it. And see, I was at Fort Bragg, Smoke Bomb Hill in the 7th Special Forces. And then when they got ready to send us to Vietnam, they divided us into the 5th Special Forces. So that's what this was in 64, 65.
So you were getting transitioned at the time that it was starting to ramp up.
Right.
Now, I don't want to step past this because it's important, but I wanted to build us back to where you were. Were you the first African-American to actually finish Special Forces training?
No, I ain't going to say I was the first because there was a few before me and they had officers that was already in. But the majority, I think, at that time I was in that.
You were in a small group, obviously, at that point. So a lot of pride there.
Yeah.
Your family had to be proud, though. Scared to death, maybe, but had to be proud, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Sister may have been mad at you a little bit because, I mean, you're not going into, like, you know, you're not working at Walmart where it's going to be safe right now. So you're going into some dangerous stuff. So in 1964, when you get your first assignment, where is it to and what is it about?
It's they sent our advisors group to Vietnam in 64, 65. We landed in Saigon at the airport, and we were sent to Da Nang, and that's why we set up headquarters at. And then they decided to send groups out to villages to be advisors.
So you guys were going to talking to the country folk.
Right.
And y'all were trying to what? What was the
learn
goal?
how to take care of their ways, how to survive from the Viet Cong.
So you guys were like educators.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So that was supposed to have been our mission. But at the same time, you was being attacked by the VCs at night or in the villages. So it was danger all around you.
Yeah, and how many folks was in your unit that y'all
12 in the group.
In the group.
Had, 10 enlisted and one officer and one warrant officer. That's what made up the 12 for a group.
And so here you are, early 20s. I mean, look, in my early 20s, I'm trying to get to class on time. It's my discipline is not exactly on point at that time in my life. And so here you are, you're in the jungles of Vietnam, obviously hostile environment, and you're trying to help the locals. And at the same time, how do you know who the enemy is?
Well, you really don't know who the enemy is. You're just trying to trust where you're at, and you're trying to seek out from the villages who's in charge and what's going on. And that was our major challenge in Vietnam at that time, in trying to help the villages. Because the VCs, when they come into a village, they try to take control of whoever the elder is in the village. And if they capture them, then the rest of the people in the village normally would follow whatever their orders or what they wanted.
Yeah.
So we tried to put a hold on that. And that was our main source.
That kind of reminds me of when we were over in the Middle East, Afghanistan war and that. What was the mantra? Hearts and souls. They were trying to win the hearts and souls of the people, and so they would go into the different towns and they would try to interact with the locals. And then at the same time, they would be ambushed. So clearly doing this, you guys had, I would imagine, several ambushes.
We had ambushes just about every night.
Just about every night.
Yep. They would walk these mortars and rounds up to the villages, and most of your villages are already enclosed compound. So a lot of the special forces guy would rather stay outside the village, the compound, because they couldn't see from the inside what's outside. And I was one of those ones that decided I want to be outside.
Yeah.
And so when you're outside, you can keep watch on what's coming your way or what's going on, and you can alert your other team members inside.
So how long does this process, I mean, like you going into the villages and stuff, how long is that, I don't know what you want to call it, assignment?
That mission, it lasts, well, it's the whole time you're there. That's what you're there for.
Okay.
To go to different villages. You just don't stay in one village your whole time. You might spend a week or two in this village, and you go to another compound or another village.
So what's life like out there? So paint a picture for my listeners and audience. The day-to-day, obviously, the nighttime you're talking about, you're being attacked and stuff.
Right.
So, like, what is that like as far as I can only imagine what the nerves must have been, your constant alertness. How do you rest? How do you eat? What are the conditions?
Well, you rest when you can, really, because you're on your alert 24/7. You are depending on your other teammates to be with you, protect you, and keep you safe. It's a buddy system. Like I say, you're a team. And you sleep when you can. As you go through the jungle, some parts of Vietnam, the jungle is so thick you can't even see your hand before your face.
Yeah.
You got insects in the summer when it's hot. It's hot. And with that steel part on your head, it is very hot.
The bugs, the mosquitoes.
Yep. And then the monsoon season, when it rained in October, it rained the whole month. You wet the whole time. You don't have no dry period. You just wet.
Yeah.
And when you're out on patrol, you're worried about stepping on mines, booby traps. It's just so much that you have to look for while you're on patrol.
And how long was that time? Because you said that y'all were on it for the whole time. You go from village to village to village.
Right.
At some point, you come back to something, right?
Right. You come back to your home base, maybe in a couple of weeks or sometime in a month, you return to your home base. And when you come back, you would just, that's when you clean up and kind of relax. And then
what was that time frame like before you would be sent back out to the next thing?
A couple of weeks.
So you get a couple weeks off,
right?
Catch your breath,
right, and then you back out again,
back to the heat,
right?
And so at some point that's like your main thing. At some point you come all the way back out of it, right?
Right.
So how long was that one stretch of time? Was it a year, 18 months? Like my uncle I know did a year. So you guys would get deployed for a period of time, and then
it was 1 year. That was normally 12 months. Sometimes you might leave a month early, or you might go into a month over your 1 year. But normally between 10 and 12 months, that's when you end your tour.
So I want people to really wrap their head around that. So when we're having a bad day or bad week, a bad year for that matter, I mean, it's easy to get lost in perspective. And, you only have your life to compare a lot of things to. I get that. But so when you hear a person's story like this, it should not be lost on you. For a whole year of your life, you had half a month of pins and needles. I mean, you may not be thinking that way with it. You're just alert. You're doing your thing. That's what you're trained to do. You may even be somewhat comfortable. As a firefighter, I could get somewhat comfortable in a house fire. Yeah. It's dangerous, but you know what you know, and you understand that. But at the same time, the danger is always lurking, exactly. And that's in the back of your head still. So here it is. You get a half month on, half month off, roughly speaking, whole year of this. When you come out of that moment, I mean, if you don't mind me asking, did you suffer any casualties amongst your group?
My first tour over there, I lost 2 close friends, very close. 2 more others, they died from Agent Orange after the return. So that was a total of 4 that I lost on my first visit to Vietnam.
And that's a quarter of the group.
Yep.
I mean, that's a third of the group.
Right.
You had 12, you said, so that's a third of the group right there.
Right.
So as a young 20-year-old experiencing that kind of, physical trauma, mental trauma, and you come out of there, I mean, are you questioning anything at this point?
Yeah, you're asking yourself the question why.
Yeah.
Why them and not me? There's the other question.
Survivor's guilt.
Yeah, exactly. And then you wonder, did I do something that I didn't do because I neglected or it happened for whatever reason?
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that you had to live with when you came back. And after about 3 or 4 months back into the U.S., that's when I decided that I should go back and maybe save somebody else's child because they were sending high school kids over.
Oh, wow.
So
yeah, in fact, I read some stats on that. It said, I wrote down a few things here. It says that 61% of the lives lost were 21 years of age or younger.
Right.
That's incredible. And there were actually some 16-year-olds that ended up being a victim of the situation.
Right.
So you're 20 what now when you come back to the States after your first tour?
I'm 25.
25 years old.
Right.
Did they give you an option about considering going back?
No, well, see, I volunteered all 3 tours over there.
So could you have had an option to not go back?
Yeah, I had an option not to even go the first time.
Wow.
Because I was the only child, only son in my family.
See.
But with the training that they had gave me, I had that desire to go back.
Yeah.
And I figured since I lost 4 guys that was close to me, I need to go back and try to get myself back on track.
Did you find yourself feeling like you were honoring them as much as anything?
Exactly.
Going back to do the job.
Exactly.
Not just helping the locals, not just doing the things that, for the young Americans that were being sent over there as a patriot.
Yeah, it was more to me as not going back to help anyone in Vietnam that lived in Vietnam. It was to me that I could, with my knowledge of Vietnam, that I would save some of the U.S. young people going over out of high school that have no idea what they was getting into.
Yeah.
That was my desire to go back.
It's interesting because I don't think that sentiment is lost from one generation to the next. I can speak from my generation. I'm 50, so I'm a few years younger than you, a couple decades back. But our guys, they were inspired. A lot of the young guys were inspired at 9/11.
Right.
And so a lot of my friends and some younger folks I know, they joined the military immediately. And it was less about going to fight terrorism as it was about protecting Americans.
Right.
And so a lot of what you were doing was the same concept
Exactly.
where you were going to a foreign country, but in the idea that you were going over there to protect your guys.
Exactly.
So I get that.
Exactly.
And so basically you have now finished your first tour.
Exactly.
And you said it was about 4 months and you're about to be sent back to your second tour.
Right. They was asking for volunteers to return to be attached to the 101st 2nd 327 Airborne over there in Vietnam. So I was one of the volunteers to go back.
How many was it going to be in this group? Is it going to be 12 again?
No, it was going to be 5 of us.
Wow. Less.
Yeah, much less.
And what was your job going to be this time exactly?
We was going to be to use us as advisors for the 101st Airborne when they was trying to take this hill over there. So we would just be used as advisors or maybe team leaders in some of the units.
Were you going to find yourself in the middle of the action again this way?
Yeah, you were going to be in the middle of the action because as a team leader, you're going to be in charge of the team.
You lead from the front.
Right, going out, and you're going to be in the front. So you had soldiers following you.
What part of the country? Was it the same spot as before?
No, this was in a different area than before. It was where the 2nd 327 101st was located when they was taking this hill that was having a hard time. And the hill was totally entrenched with the VCs, and there was no way that they could get them out. They tried everything. So it was a long battle before it was over with.
Yeah. So you go back over there. So you got Cambodia, Laos. Is this anywhere near the borders? Because I know there was a lot of back and forth.
Well, also over there we had night mission that we went into Cambodia on missions at night and did things behind our enemy lines. So we had other mission other than just being leaders in 2nd 327.
And so what the second tour, what year was that when you sent?
That was in 67, 66.
So at the end of 66, going into 67.
Right.
And I'm asking about that because we are leading up to 68, which in 68, I think it was later in the year, we had the Tet Offensive.
Right.
And so I'm going to ask a little bit about that because that was a turning point in the war, obviously.
Right.
So leading up to this point, this is the part here too that, you know, if you guys do anything with history and you look over the wars, past wars and stuff, I really recommend watching the Vietnam documentary that they have that they'll air on like the Smithsonian Channel and stuff. But I mean, it really does show you how difficult it was for Americans to fight in a war in a foreign country where the jungle was their playground, so to speak, the enemy's playground in a way. And you guys were going in with so many unknowns and trying to make sense of what the problems were within each village. And you're facing all these different dangers. So on your second tour over there, you're now the leader group of it as an advisor. You know, you've got the first experience, but what's the second experience like in comparison to the first? Are you able to pull from your previous moments? Or are you having to learn a whole new set of skill sets?
Well, no, you still pulling from what you was trained to do. You don't deviate from the way you was trained in Special Forces. You always keep that.
Yeah.
And being a leader, you still got guys that's going to follow you, and they look up to you because you are one of the best that they have. Mm-hmm. So that wasn't a hard thing. You're just trying to keep them to follow orders, do what you tell them to do. Mm-hmm. And I guess after being back over there for about 3 or 4 months, we lost 2 guys that was assigned to the 101st. They wasn't a part of our 5. Mm-hmm. But they got killed messing with the hill, and that took a toll on the rest of the group.
How many was in the other group?
There was a platoon. 101st, 2nd 327 had a platoon. It was made up of about 20 guys in the platoon.
Just getting an idea about like the groups and the numbers that you're dealing with. So essentially you got 25 folks.
Right, exactly.
Fighting on this hill.
Right. And there was more than that, but in the group that you was in charge of.
Yeah.
Right. So, and, you know, filling sandbags during the day, trying to make yourself occupied and trying to take care of your soldiers and make sure they get their food and being taken care of. So that was your responsibility as a leader.
So painting a picture for this, as you're in the trenches for a second go-round, what's communication like back home? Because I know that's another part of the story for soldiers that sometimes gets left off is what things are like back home, because the folks at home have no idea where you are, what you're doing. That's got to be difficult on a lot of levels.
Yeah, and I guess that took a toll on me because no one from my family was communicating with me whilst I was in Vietnam. The first two or the second or the third.
Mm.
So no one at home knew where I was at or what I was doing. So I didn't even really think about family. I just thought about staying alive.
Well, that would make a lot of sense.
Yeah,
That's going to take up a lot of brain space for sure.
And that was my take on that because I didn't have too much. Being in special forces, you go on missions and your family don't know where you're at. Mm-hmm. And you can't tell anyone until you get back.
That's kind of what I was wondering because, I mean, I know that just even general, like if you're assigned to an area and mail, as an example, that could be difficult just getting a letter to you in a jungle somewhere, much less a special forces guy where, your missions are, I would imagine, pretty secretive.
Yeah.
So no communication. You have a child on your second tour. How old is your child back home?
She's about 5 or 6 now.
What is baby 5 or 6 year old? Is a little girl?
Yeah.
What is she thinking about dad leaving off again? Because I'm relating all this because I had to do this similar, nothing like that, but like I had to get deployed and I had a kid back home, and it's like, it's a difficult pull.
The only thing that I can say to that is once you do return and you get a leave, you go home, you try to make up for that absence with that child. And I spent a lot of time with my daughters when I did go on leave back into the U.S. Mm-hmm. So it weighs a lot on a child when you spend that time with them, and they never forget it.
Sure.
So we used to go everywhere together. So it was, and then I had a second child during my tour, on my second tour. So I had another daughter. So again, you spend time with them and let them know how much you care for them.
Sure. So when you're over there fighting, when we're only talking about your first 2 deployments, are there any close calls you can share with us for yourself?
Yeah, on my second tour, I was on a patrol and we took a break, and that's when I got my second Purple Heart, I guess. One of the guys on the other side of the tree that I was standing by stepped on a mine, and the mine, a booby trap, and it out of the 15 guys that was around that tree, 2 guys got killed. One guy lost both legs, and a lot of people got injured from fragment. I myself, my hand got broke from fragment in 18 places. So I had been in country 8 months when this happened.
And that's your second tour?
This is my second tour. So they evacuated me out due to my hand was so messed up.
Yeah.
So I didn't return after that. And it took about 6 months for them to get my hand back function.
When the mine went off, what was the next things going on after that? Because I want to paint a picture for everybody to see what this chaos looks like.
Well,
clearly there's a lot of stuff happening right
there.
Yeah,
when that went off, we called in air support. We called in other units to evacuate people out that was hurt. So we had choppers coming in to evac the soldiers that was hurt out, and the ones that was deceased, the ones that was hurt. So it was 2 choppers came in and evacuated us out. And to me, I was, I guess, not in pain. I guess I was in shock because I was still running around trying to take care of my soldiers.
I would imagine I was about to go down that road about the heroes that I'm sure you witnessed on a daily basis.
And people say you're a hero, but I always said I'm doing what I was trained to do, so I'm not a hero.
Right.
It's just taking care of your soldiers, and that's number one when you're in the military, is the unity that you have with other people and to take care of them, to make sure that they stay alive at all costs. And knowing that I had lost 2 was weighing heavy on me. Mm-hmm. So, you don't worry about self, you worry about your people.
That's right. And, I resonate with that comment as a firefighter. Even you going in, and if something goes on and one of your guys is they're trapped or there's a problem, there's nothing you won't do to make sure that person can be taken care of if there's anything you can do.
Right.
And so you don't see yourself in that light as the hero. Yeah. But here's where I think that I can make a little bit of a defining moment for anyone that puts themselves in these situations. You know, there's so much that we can control and there's so much that we can't control. And in the end, God is in control.
Yes, he is.
And so whenever something does take place, I do believe God puts people in certain spots that he knows can handle whatever that next thing is. And so for you being there as a civilian looking on the outside in, I think it's okay for people in your position, even as firefighters, paramedics, police officers, to accept the admiration that others would give, because not everybody can do that. I say that in a way that, you know, it is a decision you're making to save other people's lives at the risk of your own, and you're not doing it to pat yourself on the back. But I do think God does anoint people to be put in certain positions. And sir, I have no doubt that there was a reason and a purpose in that moment. Even though it was tough on you, you had injuries, I can see the passion you have even now, thinking back to how much you wanted to be the person that could help them, even though you were injured. Your life came second, and that makes perfect sense to me.
Yes, I can look back at that and says the guy that lost both legs, he's still alive. He's the only one that's still alive
today, right now. Wow.
Exactly. And he is a lawyer in California. So it just makes me feel honored to know that I did something to help someone that, you know, that could have been worse.
Yeah, so, absolutely. So you, at that point, you get airlifted out of there. I'm sure you could tell stories that would go on for months and months about the helicopter pilots. Right. I had an opportunity once to interview and talk to a helicopter pilot, and he became very sick, and we never got to do the interview, and I have regretted that so much, because those guys were unsung heroes in their own way. They were going into some stuff.
They are amazing.
I mean, they could fly through anything, it seemed like, and pull you guys out of there. And so you come back home. And you said how many months again?
It took about 5 months for me to get my hand, and get use of my hand again.
So let me ask you this. Was there ever a point you're thinking, all right, that's going to have to be it. I'm done?
No, I guess that never crossed my mind. I always said I'm going to stay in for 20 years. So
you had a goal there. I was about to ask. I'm like, so where's the drive? It's like, all right, no, that's not it, because I ain't at my time yet.
Yeah. Now, to me, the military was a home, I guess. It made me the man that I am today.
Yeah.
And I was raised up with discipline, so discipline wasn't a problem. And being in the Special Forces Green Beret was an honor. And I just loved military. I loved the life, and I loved the training. And I had made master blaster for his jumping out of planes. And I used to go up with a lot of guys jumping, so I got over 600 jumps jumping out of plane. And I just thank the Lord that nothing just broke, and I never had a chute that didn't open. But
you wouldn't be here talking to me probably if one of those moments happened.
Yeah, and I was blessed.
Yeah.
But then later on down in 68, 69, they asked for volunteers to go back to Vietnam, so that was my third tour. Then I went back. When
you're going back a third time, and you volunteered for that one, as we know now, that is right at the cusp of the Tet Offensive. Now, I'm not going to give a history lesson here, folks, but here's what the bottom line is. At this point in the war, it's been going on for a minute. We've lost a lot of lives.
Yes. Yeah.
And American people are getting sick of it, the war itself. And then the North Vietnamese and I don't know the other group. I've lost it off the top of my head. I didn't write stuff down. This is what I remember.
Tiger Army,
that's right.
Right.
They take an attack on America.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we take a big hit. And then that really sent protest and everything else into a whole nother direction back home.
Exactly.
And so here you are, you're like, all right, third round, I'm not done.
Yep. And I felt that I still had a lot left in me. So they sent me to Play Coup. Mac V Com Center was my tour in 68 to 69.
How old were you?
I was 28.
28 years old.
Yeah. And went in to Play Coup. They sent me off to Marble Hill to pull guard duty, up on the mountain. And that's why most of your Special Forces guys was at. We had, after about 6 months over there, we used to go out on patrol, I guess, twice a week and through the jungle. We had a second lieutenant just came in from West Point, and I was trying to tell him that we can't go through the jungle we need to go up on the ridge to go around because you can't see anything down in the jungle.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a few words, but anyway, he finally took my advice.
So you were adamant about that advice.
Exactly.
Sometimes you got to be.
So I said, it's good you finished West Point, but I said, Vietnam is not West Point.
Right. You ain't going to learn this in a book.
Exactly. I said, this thing that these guys can do in Vietnam that you ain't going to find in your book. I said, because they'll put a rocket in your back pocket.
Mm-hmm.
But during that time, out on patrol and stuff, I was on duty one night, and the guy in the foxhole with me, he died. He got his throat cut.
Mm.
And I had taken a break because I told him, your time to watch, and I'll take a break. So I put the poncho over me and backed up in the hole, went to sleep. And when I woke up, he was gone.
Oh, dang.
So
they just didn't see you.
Didn't see me. And I said,
Wow.
It's just the Lord's will that I survived this.
Mm-hmm.
And after that happened, we had the FOB4 had a conference. And I had been in country, I guess, about 8 months. And I was counting down, ready to go home. And FOB was attacked by the VCs, and that was their best they had for snipers. And it was over 2,000.
Wow.
So that was the worst history in Green Berets history. We lost a lot of people that day. Mm. And it reminded me so much of Normandy when people was coming ashore.
Yeah.
If you stand still, you die.
Wow.
That day over there, if you stopped and stood still, you can count yourself gone.
So where were you in the fray?
I was right in
the thick of it.
Yep, right in there. You was running and people was falling like flies, and it was just unreal. And that's when I said, Lord, if you get me out of Vietnam this time, I would never set foot in this land again.
Yeah.
And during that fight, 24-hour fight, we lost over, friends that I knew, people that I knew, it was 10 guys that lost their lives. Mm. And it was just, I kept asking myself, when am I going to get hit?
Yeah.
And I never did. So it was just a miracle and Almighty God that protected me.
How did you guys get out of that? I mean, that's the question I would be asking right now.
They call in our support. They call in other units. After 24 hours, we finally got a break, and our Americans started coming in and fighting, and it ended.
Yeah.
Yep. But it was a 24 hours or longer that we went through continuously fire. And the VCs had written on their headband, I come here to die. And the way they was fighting, that's what they did. And for them, if they got killed, it was glorified for them.
Yeah.
So they enjoyed killing you.
It's really hard to beat somebody that has seemingly nothing to lose.
Yep. And, nowadays you look at these attacks from terrorists, it's the same
thing.
Same mind set. They put on these vests and blow you up and think nothing of it.
Yeah. So you weren't hit during that one?
No, I wasn't hit at all.
And so when you get out of that, how long is it before the orders come for you to go back?
It was about 3 weeks after that happened. I was returned back to the States.
So you had 12, you were assigned there for 12 months though, or no?
Right. I was assigned for 12 months, but I only spent 10 months and something before they sent me back.
Were you able to make any, request out of that? I think that you had served plenty at that point.
No,
they didn't take that into consideration?
No, they just said it's time for you to go back.
Okay.
So they sent me back to Fort Bragg. And after I got back to Bragg, that's when I had to seek help for PTSD because I wasn't the same no more after that.
Yeah. Well, so this is a great moment here to take our break. And when we come back, we're going to get into what post-war looks like for you, family life, what the next pages are for you, and hit on some of that timeline. So, because what year was it you came back to America after the third one?
69.
69.
Right.
So that obviously is right in the thick of the civil rights movement. Right. I want to get all of this from you, see where you were, and we will wrap, of course, at the end of this about who you are today and what you do for the veterans out there. This will be fantastic. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these messages.
A great opportunity awaits. The Motivate with Coach Camp podcast is now in its second season, and we are excited to say that we have listeners all over the United States and in 19 countries. If you have a company and you're interested in some very affordable advertising, while at the same time supporting a great cause, please go to motivatewithcoachcamp.com and fill out that sponsorship page, and we'll get right back to you. You can support the podcast through donations on Venmo at Motivate with Coach Camp. Thank you to all the listeners and guests who have blessed this podcast with their engagement and involvement.
All right, so just before we went to the break, we're speaking with my friend, Mr. James Williams, Vietnam veteran, and while we're on break, he divulges some more stuff to me. This is how you know you've done some living, whenever some small details like, oh, I don't know, getting shot slips your mind. And so he also lets me know that in his first tour, he also got shot in the leg. And that was his first Purple Heart. And so that's pretty impressive, sir, whenever it's
Thank you.
oh, yeah, let me throw that one in there too. Absolutely outstanding. Fantastic. So in 69, as we were getting to, you're coming back home now.
Right.
And since you volunteered the first 3 times, it could be safe to say they probably won't send you back a 4th if you don't volunteer. So now you're like, okay, I'm going to come back to the States and we're going to go from there. We're going to see what we can do. Now, in the late 60s, mid to late 60s, that was the height, the peak of a lot of the civil rights movement. I think it was in 68 when Martin Luther King got killed here in Memphis. And so you're coming back. So it's not only you've been in a hostile situation and obviously dealt with everything you could ever try to even nightmarishly dream up over in war, and you come back home. And we also know 2 things. So we know that our Vietnam veterans were not well received by a lot of people, not everybody. I'm not going to say that because there were pockets, certainly, but a lot of citizens were not kind to our Vietnam veterans when they came home.
Yes, I was one of those they wasn't kind to.
And you're also facing being a minority coming back. And so at that time, obviously, not that before that it wasn't, but tensions are running high. Exactly. And so you're facing racial situations as well as war situations as a soldier. Talk to me a little bit about what that's like coming back to America that you clearly love. You love this country, willing to serve, fight for the people, fight for the citizens, fight for your guys. Talk to me. Well,
when I returned the last time, it really hit home to me that, I started questioning myself, what is wrong with the United States? Why are these people so much hate on soldiers? And you just following orders and you're doing what they tell you to do in the military. Mm-hmm. And I just couldn't understand why were they calling us baby killers and spitting on soldiers and we fighting for their freedom. That just, it rubbed me the wrong way.
Sure.
And it made me highly upset. And not only I look at so many blacks that was in Vietnam and what they contribute to our freedom. Mm-hmm. And it just doesn't ring out the honor that they deserve for what they went through over there.
Absolutely.
And I don't know. They sent me to Fort Campbell when I returned my last time to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And that's where I worked at for about, I guess, a year, and then I ended up going back overseas to Germany to 10th Special Forces in Bad Toast.
So you were a teacher at that time?
No, I was still in the military.
Oh, you're still in the military.
Right. And after spending from 71 to 73 in Germany, I was sent back to Fort Benning, Georgia, still in the military, and I was a E7 at the time. And that's when I made warrant officer in 1973 at Fort Benning. I was also eligible for to make E8 again.
And E9s is how they go for the non-military folks out there. So you're climbing the ladder. And how many years had you been in at that point?
I had been in, I guess, about 12 years.
That's incredible.
Right. So my commanding officer at Fort Benning told me you can either take your E8 promotion or you can take your warrant officer promotion. So I told him I'll try the warrant. Mm-hmm. So I was discharged on a Wednesday, sworn back in a Thursday as a CW01. After that, I was sent to charm school at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, which is tell you how to become an officer. Mm-hmm. And then I came back to Fort Gordon, Georgia in communication course And then I word my branch commander to let me attend the Warrant Officer Advanced course, which he fought me for a while because he said no W1 ever went to no Warrant Officer Advanced course.
Yeah, tell you what you can't do, right?
But after worrying him a while, he agreed, and he told me I would flunk out. So I attended the Warrant Officer Advanced course, and I graduated number 10 out of the class.
I love it.
And then they reassigned me to 2nd Infantry Division in Korea. I worked as the ComSec officer for General Emerson, General Brooks, and General Patton. Those was my rater, reviewer, and endorser. So I spent 12 months in Korea, TDC, Tundishan, 2nd Infantry Division, ComSec officer. And then I left there and went back to Germany, 10th Special Forces in Bad Toast, and they assigned me to 7th Corps, 34th Sigma Battalion in Ludwigsburg. So I became a platoon leader as a warrant officer and the ComSec officer for the battalion. So I spent 3 years there, and I made W2. And then
explain what that is.
W2 is Chief Warrant Officer 2. That's a promotion from W1 to W2. And then I went to Fort Hood, Texas, to a signal unit, and then they transferred me to Fort Riley, Kansas. So at Fort Riley, Kansas, I became the communication officer, and I also retired in March 1981 as a Chief Warrant Officer 3.
And how many years of service was that altogether?
20 years and 2 months.
So not only did you make it on your 20-year promise to yourself.
Exactly.
You had a couple more months in there.
Exactly.
Climb the ranks, go around to all these different places, teaching all the information that you had gained in that first 12 years that clearly is not something that your average soldier would have experienced. One tour is enough, but then you think about you put in over 2.5 years in a hostile territory, experiencing things that are untold. Here's what I see, though. Here's what I see. First of all, I want to commend him. How old are you, sir, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 81 now.
81, and just gave a detailed, bullet-pointed history of his life. I do good to tell you what I did last week, sir. That is so impressive. But you know what? That's one thing I have found about veterans that served during difficult times. World War II, World War II veterans. Mr. Olin Pickens.
Right.
He's 102 now. That man knew every detail from step to step to step. I was like, I forgot I was interviewing him. I'm just an audience member. I'm over here like, oh, that's amazing. I got to ask questions. So yeah, you're the same thing, detailed. Now, we talked about when you come back to America, it's obviously you've just been through stuff that no human should ever have to see and do for 3 different tours. And you mentioned PTSD. Now, I know this, being a firefighter, paramedic, working in the field, you have colleagues that suffer with it. You have people that, that have been in the military that we've made calls on and we pick them up. But back in the 60s, 70s, even maybe 80s, PTSD really wasn't a thing. So what was that like trying to come to terms with some of that?
PTSD to me was very, very hard. I was angry all the time. I kept having flashbacks at night doing to some of the people that was killed in front of me. It was a nightmare, and you was not yourself. You just kept asking yourself, what could I have done to save the people that gave their life for this country? It eats on you, and you don't trust yourself. So I myself said I need help, and no one had to push me or tell me.
What year was that?
This was in 60 and 70.
So almost immediately coming home,
right.
You recognized
exactly.
Things are not who I am.
Exactly. And when I went home on leave, I just wanted to be by myself.
Yeah.
I didn't want to associate with any part of the family or anything. So that's when I really noticed that something is irritating me.
Yeah.
So I finally convinced my first sergeant to let me go talk to a doctor and a shrink, as you want to call it, and see can I get some help.
Had anyone that you had known that had been
Nobody
else was doing that?
Nobody that I knew.
Do you understand how significant that is, though? Because you took a step that at that time, and probably in some circles even to this day, people see that as a moment of weakness, right? Because of the job you did, you're considered like this superhuman person, impenetrable, and you're like, I've got problems. I need somebody to help me with this. And people still, in certain jobs, the bravado keeps them from getting help. And I see this completely different. I think it's the biggest sign of strength that a person can do to say, hey, I'm hurting. And it's not me. I'm not acting like myself. Can somebody help me? So what would you say to soldiers right now, especially because I'm sure you know the statistics, 22 a day take their lives.
Yeah.
What would you say to them? Because you obviously did something that was cutting edge, which is not surprising, sir. First African-American going into that stuff, come back home, you're fighting, you're Green Beret. It's like, you do it all. So it like makes a lot of sense. People will hear your words right now. Tell them what should they do? Why should they go get help?
Well, my idea of what you should do is to seek help. Is it'll change your lifestyle, and you won't feel weak. Mm-hmm. You don't feel sorry for yourself. You won't be less of a man if you seek help. And the reason I can say this, I'm a Christian man, and I always have been. Even though during my time in the military, a lot of times it was a far thing from my mind about Christian or God. I was just doing my job. But when I returned to the States, you start going back to the house of the Lord and praying and reading his word. And it makes a difference in your life. Mm-hmm. And that's why I say I needed help. And once I did seek help and start laying on a couch and telling the doctor the things that was inside of me, because the stuff that's inside of you that you see in combat, it will drive you insane. Mm-hmm. And if you can talk about it, it's like pouring water out of a bucket. You become empty. You don't have that pressure inside of you no more. Mm. So you feel free, and you get closer to our Savior Almighty. You read his words, and you put your faith back in him, and you can do anything through Christ, believe me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it just changed my life around. I didn't have anger no more. I started enjoying life. I started helping other soldiers, other people, and it's a relief to me to be able to help others out there.
So clearly, what you're sharing right now with my audience members is there can be a better tomorrow. There is hope. You don't have to feel the way you feel right now tomorrow. Seeking help is not a sign of weakness. No. It actually makes sense of the reasons why you feel the way you feel, which is one of the things that has always been, I don't know that that's said enough. For myself, nothing compared to you, nothing, absolutely nothing compared to you, but I had my moments where it's like I struggled to make sense of stuff. When you talk to people, and other people can infuse some of that wisdom or knowledge or experience, because that's what you have now, and which is where we're about to get to in a minute, is people give you that sense of relief of, okay, the way I feel is not weird. It's okay. It's actually normal. Right. And these are the things people are able to do to be able to move forward and feel better and have a better, more healthy, productive life. Yeah. And then I think that this is the part here that I really do want to drive home. You know, having a point of faith to recognize that what you went through has a purpose. And sometimes in the moment, in the heat of battle, we cannot see what that purpose is.
Exactly.
You went through that, sir, if you don't mind me saying, because now that full circle has been happening. You go and you speak to other soldiers, and you speak to, like this platform right now, I promise you, your story is going to hit. People are going to feel that. Somebody right now has been battling with whether or not they should take their own life. And sir, I hope that your story gives them the strength they need to get help.
Yes, I praise the Lord that it will.
Don't sit on the couch. Yes. Don't feel like that you can't do something about it. Go get help. Because I promise you, tomorrow can be better. I promise you it can.
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Williams, sometimes the coach camp in me, I feel the passion, and it's there because I want people to see, a person as strong as you. Also allow yourself to be vulnerable enough to help others, because I think that's key. Keeping our humility and recognizing why we're here and that there is a purpose and it serves bigger than us. So, sir, obviously you had to go down a long road. How long did the therapy last before
3
you started?
Years. It lasted 3 years, and after that, the shrink was over with. But I still, to this day, my faith is in the Almighty. I still read and have quiet time with the Almighty daily. And that, to me, keeps me on the right track to be the man that I am today.
And you go and you share your story.
Yes.
And people feel that. They know that to be true. And so here you are on the Coach Camp Show, and you divulge to me this because now this is the part two that I think is so important, the lineage that starts to take place. You were the first person in your family to ever branch into the military.
Right.
But you shared with me your son has now followed your footsteps.
Yes, my youngest son, Christopher Darrell Williams, he's also in the military now, and he's in Special Forces as well. He's been in 17 years and been on a few missions in Africa. He's been deployed to Poland. He's been deployed to Jerusalem. So he's been in the heat of battle, and he's hanging in there. He's E8 as well right now.
Wow. And you said how many years he's been? 18? 17 years?
Yes.
Wow. So there's got to be a spillover of pride for him,
yes,
and at the same time, fear. I mean, as a father,
yes,
I get it. I've
yes,
got boys, so it's like, I understand.
Yes.
But, I think that it is a testament, though, to lead by example, be a strong person, and ultimately that's going to be played forward because now here's the part that we cannot see yet. But your son is getting tools, and his purpose is being built, and that down the road, he could be sitting in the seat like you, helping the next generation of people that need his message. And it started with you.
Yes.
The lineage and the legacy is so important that we leave that behind in the right way. And I think that there's obviously no doubt that you're doing that, sir. So a question that comes to mind, because here's a person that is a true patriot, love America, served, your son serving. This is not a political statement. This is a people statement. This is what this is. Today's nation, I think, is fair to say there is a lot of turmoil. I think that there is a lot of opposing opinions.
Yes.
And one of the things that I have seen personally, as far as the media is concerned, I can't say that in a day-to-day basis, the people around me, not so much, but broad spectrum, is a lack of patriotism, a lack of appreciation that America is a land of opportunity.
Yes, it is.
And so what would you say to this generation today of what it meant for you to serve? And now that you look back on it and all the men and women that you served with, why would they think about why they should appreciate America?
Well, number one, you could appreciate America for being Americans. The freedom that you have didn't come free. And the people that gave their lives and served in our military for our freedom, we should honor those guys and ladies every time we see one. They sacrifice that they make daily on a daily basis, being away from their families, being away from their children, not being there for birthdays, graduations. It's a sacrifice for a soldier that no one really realized but that soldier. I says to the younger generation, wake up. Start learning what it means to be free. What does it cost to be free? And put yourself in these veterans' shoes and try to live for your country, because the other countries is nothing like the USA. I've been around the world 3 times, and USA is one of the best places, and it always makes me feel great to welcome myself back home to the USA. So I said to the younger generation, live for your USA, serve your USA. Freedom is what we live for, and the opportunities are plentiful in the USA.
Amen, sir. And this is a message coming from a gentleman who served 3 tours in a hostile environment, came home to a less than friendly America. You grew up during the civil rights movement.
Yes.
You've seen what it's like to have racism poured upon you.
Yes.
You are sitting here today as a testament saying, this country is worth fighting for.
Yes, it is.
America is not perfect, but America is great.
Yes, it is.
The opportunities are boundless, and you have the chance to do and become anything you choose to do.
Amen.
If you put the work in and you
Yes.
believe in it.
Yes, for sure.
Well, I will say this, sir. I could talk to you until, tomorrow, probably. It's one, my wife would say, yes, he could. He has a lot of words. The other part of it is you are a fascinating man. Obviously, so many stories, and we barely touched, I'm sure, just a sliver of the things that you've experienced and been through, but told your story, in my opinion, in a very nice, neat way of all the years that you put in, all the stuff that you've accomplished, and the fact that you're still out there sharing that moment with other people. So as we get close to the finish line here, what I would like to ask you, sir, is what would you leave my listeners and audience with? What's the final message you would have for them?
Sir, my final message is, in my conclusion, is we must never forget the incredible things that the military has done for our freedom. We served in Vietnam, we served in Iraq and Afghanistan. We lost a lot of lives, and we should always honor those people that made the ultimate sacrifice of dying for our country. We shared my story and hoping that it will entice someone to do better in their lives with PTSD, live a better life as USA citizen. We owe it to our ancestors, we owe it to our country. I just want to thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of veterans of the United States of America. Thank you.
Mr. Williams, you are truly, truly an American treasure. Thank you so much for everything you've done. Thank you so much for coming down here to the studio. I don't even have to put into words what it's going to mean to so many people. So I thank you, sir. Love you as a brother in Christ. I wish you nothing but the best. I know that your time's not done. You got more to go. So, and hey, Folin Pickens is an example. You got about 25 more years. So just keep on plugging away, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
Yes,
Appreciate
sir.
it.
All right. To my listeners, thank you as always for tuning in. Look, send this gentleman some messages. This is Veterans Month. Go out there, hug a veteran, continue to tune in, continue to watch. Go to my website, motivatewithcoachcamp.com. Subscribe to my YouTube. And until next time, Coach Camp out.
I love the chase and the hunt, and I set the pace when I'm running. I always take what I want and I always give it 100. Don't need a bank, no, I'm funded. Play the game like it's nothing. I'm always thankful for something. Don't take for granted, stay humble. Now wake up, it's time to look at the enemy. Look in the mirror if he is no friend to me. It's not